Welcome to Beyond the Numbers with Christian Stevens. My guest today is someone I've known for a long time, a huge advocate for the broking industry. He's done a lot for so many people. Peter White, head of FBAA. Welcome.
Thanks, Christian. It's my great privilege to be here with you today. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I actually asked you just before we came in here, and I didn't even know the answer to this question. You've been with FBAA now for 23 years?
Just on, yeah.
Wowza. And what would you do before that?
So I cut my teeth in the 70s in banking and finance, and basically have spent my entire career in the industry. So I originally stepped into retail banking. So I was there at one of our big four banks down on Newport Beach, having a wonderful time in New South Wales. It was a great era. And then ventured off into finance companies, wound up in investment banking and non-banking area. I set up the first sales office for AMS Home Loans back in 1993.
Wow.
And then wound up with Mark Boris in Wizard and his first foray into mortgage broking. And then doing some consultancy and brokerages of my own, which then sort of led me into the early days of FBAA, where I was state president for New South Wales in 2003. And I took over, that's the wrong word. I was asked to step into the role of what they called junior vice president and then senior vice president, which led into national president and chairman of the board.
Yep. So
that was in the back end of the 2000 years, so from 2007 to 2010. They were all volunteer roles.
Yep.
And then in 2010 onwards, I was asked to also take on, in addition to what I was doing, the CEO role. So full-time, not volunteer work, which the other roles were. And so there I stayed and wound up with various titles of executive director and landed eventually at managing director. So there we are today.
I've been broking for 7-8 years now.
Yeah.
So you've been, with the FBAA for almost 3 times that. You've seen, I would imagine, some big changes in the industry. Like when you first started, I would imagine they were setting things by fax, and these days, obviously, the wave of AI coming through. What are some really key moments in the last 23 odd years where you've seen the biggest change in our industry from your perspective?
Sure. So I might peg it a bit before that. When I first started banking and finance, I was there when the first Olivetti computers were put into the Commonwealth Bank.
Awesome.
And they were things that were as wide as this desk and probably as deep, and shuttered and banged and clanked as you put in a passport and went zip, 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 printing your data into it. And I was also there when the first hole in the wall, the first ATM machine was installed in New South Wales.
Awesome.
That was at the entrance branch a few years later. But yeah. There's been some significant changes since then. So in the broking sector, I first became a broker in the late 90s in a time where brokers were very much scorned upon. They were not trusted, and particularly not trusted in regional markets. So I set up my brokerage as a broker in country New South Wales. Kind of think back, so was that a smart move or not? But I was one of the first in this industry to ever advertise on TV, and I did it as a collaboration between a whole lot of businesses, predominantly motor vehicle dealerships, that were doing little bits and pieces, but I brought it together as a collaborative effort under my broking business to put a high level of advertising onto television. And from that period on, television became a bit of a thing for brokers to go into. But they were very early days and very fragmented industry. And regulation changed and evolved, and this was one of the significant changes from what was the UCCC, and prior to that it was the CCC, so the Consumer Credit Act, and came the Uniform Consumer Credit Code, and now into the NCCP, the National Consumer Credit Protection Act. They are significant milestones in our industry, and a lot of people sort of may scratch their head and say, "Why are you talking about regulation being major milestones?" Well, they were, because each step was an improvement in the industry.
Definitely.
Because what was happening in the past wasn't that good, right? And especially the NCCP and then the best interest duty. These are 2 very important milestones in our industry to actually build our future. So the NCCP came into being because the UCCC was being fragmented by states, And those that wanted too bad were finding the weakest link in the chain around the country and going through that to keep doing business. So they'd be shut down here and all of a sudden they'd pop up there.
Yep.
And that was just not on. And the FBAA was the leader of advocating change into the NCCP. Others followed after that. We're the first saying, no, you need one piece of legislation federally to ensure that people don't try and, those that want to do bad don't try and get through any gaps.
Yep.
And look, at the end of the day, it was called the Finance Brokers Act. That's what its original name was, not NCCP. And a part of our conversations back in those days, and far be it from me to be too outspoken, that's a different story, we changed the thinking in saying, well, you just can't cover finance brokers, because finance brokers is the term for our industry.
Yep.
People talk about mortgage broking.
Pretty general though.
But that was the point. Yep. That was the general capture of the industry. Then everything else was a subset under that. So with mortgage broking, finance broking, or commercial broking or asset broking, whatever, they were the subsets underneath finance broking. That's why it's called the Finance Brokers Act to start with. Yeah. We brought it into NCCP because we needed to make sure that lenders were also captured into this framework, because everybody was involved in consumer debt. So the NCCP became a very fundamental, pivotal point in our history. And then the best interest duty, and as much as everybody hates more rules, is probably one of the best things that has happened to the brokering sector, both for today, or when it first came out, and into the future. Because a bank can't say they act in your best interest, because they don't.
Yep.
They only have one product line that they're allowed to promote, and that's the bank's product line. They act under the banking code of conduct, but they don't act under the best interest duty obligations as do brokers. And that's such a foundation piece of the value proposition to consumers in today's market.
Yep.
So I think there's some of the keys. I'm sure there's many more somewhere, but I said there's key pivotal things that
It's
happen.
an interesting lead into my next question. I was on Finance and Coffee this morning, as I find myself often on there. And there was a poll up around discussions with MFAA, FBAA for concerning, or things that brokers are finding concerning.
Yep.
And it tends to be the three same issues for my last 10 years I've been around, which is clawbacks.
Hey, and I wasn't there.
Net of offset.
Yep.
And channel conflict.
And channel conflict. So your first two are the things that we've been advocating for change on for a long period of time.
Yep.
And so clawbacks and net of offset commissions. We did research, it must have been about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, where we saw that there's a 342% increase in brokers not getting paid their commissions on net of offset accounts up to 12 months after the money being used. And in some cases, never got paid at all.
Yep.
So that's just unacceptable in anybody's terms. But it's also linked to the conversations around clawbacks, because that's all about remuneration as well. So from day one, when clawbacks were introduced into this industry a long time ago, it was done for a certain reason. One of the reasons was churn of portfolios, right back in the beginning days.
Yep.
And what people were doing, getting a portfolio of $20 or $50 million worth of loans, and saying, I'm going to take from this lender, put it to that lender, because I get paid another upfront. Yep. Now, that wasn't what it was meant to be about. Today, when we talk about clawbacks and churn, most of the times when people use the word churn, they have the definition of it fundamentally wrong. It was about portfolio movement. It was never about acting in the best interest of the client, the one client. So some people say, oh, you're moving this person out of this loan and into this loan at month 14, you're churning that client. Well, that's not churn, so long as you are acting in the best interest of a client. And, the clawback conversation in the papers and discussions we've had with government, and also remember 3 and a bit years ago, I was the first person ever to get a federal minister to turn around and support a conversation around fairer outcomes on clawbacks.
I remember that.
Never, ever happened.
Yep.
So that was the Honourable Stephen Jones. We did a webinar on that, and it was promoted on a national basis. He was the first time ever. Otherwise, no politician or regulator wanted to have that conversation. So we worked a lot over the last 3 and a bit years with Stephen, many, many papers. We had stakeholder engagement in our boardrooms. We had a boardroom lunch with him and key people that were present in that on July of last year, I think it was. Stephen wanted hopefully I can say this on your podcast, Stephen wanted our top 10 shit list, right? So we gave it to him. What was the top 2? Clawbacks, net of offset, right? And Stephen was all on board for that, and then he left government. So today we now have the Honourable Dr. Daniel Molino. I've had 2 meetings with him and waiting on a third to be finalised with his chief of staff at the moment, where we've spoken about the issues around clawbacks and that backs into net of office and so on. And he's all up for it. But as is typical with any federal minister, he knows nothing about it.
Yep.
Right? He doesn't.
Most people have no idea. Yeah.
But the thing in government is that when you change ministers, the past knowledge is not transferred to the new incumbent. And that's done so there's no conflict of interest and a whole host of reasons that government put to it. So what was done in the past doesn't transfer automatically or largely to the new minister. But the new minister said he likes, in my colloquialism, likes the work that Stephen was doing, supports what he's doing, and wants to continue that conversation. So we've had 2 short briefings on it. We've got a more in-depth meeting to have. Hopefully that'll happen in the first 3 months of 2026.
Can I ask what is the solution?
The solution is...
what's your opinion on what the solution should be?
So it was never about getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think they should exist at all, but that's my own personal opinion. From a industry, association and professional point of view, it's there for a reason and an appropriate reason, so long as it's appropriately measured. So there's 3 things that need to happen, and that is it needs to be fair to the lender. They've written the loan, they've got infrastructure costs, blah, blah, blah. So it has to be, the outcome has to be fair to them. It has to be fair to the consumer, because there are conversations from banks saying, well, if you want to reduce the period of clawbacks or modify that, we'll probably have to push the rate up to the borrower. That can never happen. And third, and certainly not least of all, it must be fair to the broker. The broker did the business. They were engaged to do a job. They did their job. It was done. They got paid their money. It should be bugger off and hands off sort of thing. I've done my job. It shouldn't have somebody with their hand in your pocket for upwards of 2 years. So that is completely unfair. So somewhere in the mix of all that is a position that says, well, here's what is possibly fair. Now, peg in the sand was simply this, and the peg in the sand is to start a conversation, doesn't make it the end result, but was to say clawback should not go longer than 12 months and the broker should be left with something.
Yep.
Right, wrote the deal. Nobody reimburses a broker their expenses, right?
Yep.
So they pay all this money to get a loan done and all their infrastructure costs and et cetera, et cetera. When a clawback happens, nobody says, oh, by the way, here's reimbursement of X percentage of your costs.
Yep.
Doesn't happen, and we are all small business people. So it's a big rip-up for industry and for brokers. So by saying cut it off at 12 months, and the reason for the 12 months is to say, well, if it happens inside of 12 months, something was wrong or something very unexpected happened, right? Either, don't take this wrong, the broker screwed up, or alternatively, the lender screwed up and all of a sudden they jacked their rates by 2%, which caused the movement, or they had a windfall. They had a lotto win. They had a death in the family with a large inheritance. They moved overseas. Things that are outside the broker's control, which is why the brokers should be left with something. After 12 months, well, this is when the best interest duty starts to apply in a more profound sense, saying, well, I'm going to health check everybody on an annual basis. There may be a market impact of change that then all of a sudden says, well, I need to look at this sooner than later. So at month 14 or 15, I'm there going, wait on, you really need to move this around. This lender has price creeped your interest rate. So it's ratcheted up over 12 months, unlike others. This lender doesn't have that sort of underlying philosophical movement. So maybe this is an option you need to consider. And then you go through the motions of the pros and cons. And
I think it definitely depends on the client type as well.
Oh, unquestionably.
Rita, my business partner, does a lot of professional investor clients.
Yep.
And they often work with buyer's agents, and there's a whole dialogue with a lot of leading buyer's agents around refi every 12 months, cash your equity out, buy again. The whole philosophy of building wealth through property has changed from, my parents was pay down your own occupied home, have a debt-free house, and that's success. Whereas now it's like leveraged equity, have income-producing assets at retirement. The whole, psychology of building wealth has changed, and I feel like best interest duty, net of offset, clawbacks, a lot of that isn't in line with what is being pushed from a message perspective.
Becomes an inhibitor.
Yeah, so I've had this conversation a couple of times with buyers and saying, look, I hear you. I understand what you're trying to do, but refiring a client every 12 months and me getting a clawback just means I'm working for free. That doesn't actually work.
Well, I guess, and there's a balance in that. So to me, one thing is a client not refinancing and disappearing out of the system as far as clawbacks are concerned. The other is on a refinance, I think we philosophically need to probably look at it with different lenses or in a different way, understanding that if I refinance a client of my own, although I get a clawback, I get a new up front. And the two should hopefully balance themselves out, maybe put a few shekels in the tin. It doesn't help to pay the cost of the run of the business. But what it does do is create the longevity of the trail, right? So the trail will continue. It won't disappear because the two replace each other, right? So in a refinance of your own transaction is not as bad an outcome as somebody refinancing your deal and they're disappearing, or a life event that you have no control over happens and all of a sudden you're getting clipped for something. You say, well, hey, wait a second. This is way outside of my control. Why am I being penalised for something like this? So there's a few different pieces in that puzzle that need to be thought through, which is why it's not necessarily an easy, clear-cut answer, especially when you're talking with government, because you need to position all these things appropriately so that they understand something that they don't do every day, but also isn't being promoted as a more of a business commercial reality rather than a practical reality that is beneficial to the consumer. Because at the end of the day, government and regulators aren't interested in you or me as business people. What they're interested in and what all this revolves around is impact to the consumer. So everything has to be in the consumer benefit, otherwise it never plays out, which is why this conversation takes forever.
Let's talk about channel conflict quickly, because I think we could probably spend a couple of hours on that. But let me just first say, I actually haven't experienced an enormous amount of this myself. Like, yes, obviously from time to time here and there, there definitely have been some situations where they've taken the absolute piss, but mostly it's been absolutely fine. I'm in two thoughts about this, right? Because at the end of the day, a bank is a business. They are accountable to their shareholders. The reality is they have to work with brokers, not that they want to work with brokers, except for like maybe Macquarie or a couple of other lenders. I do feel like it's a forced relationship for a lot of them. When you started with the FBAA, what was the broker market share? Do you even remember?
It would have been around the 35, 40% mark.
Now it's pushing almost 80, 77 or something, 76.
Yeah, debatable stat, but yeah, it's up there. It's unquestioned it's continued to grow throughout that time. But the thing with channel conflict is that's really the domain of the major banks who have retail distribution, branch networks, right? The second tiers, the non-banks and all that, they're not involved in this conversation. So unfortunately, it sits around four, whether they like it or not. And some play it well, some play it don't. And if I go back to that era, especially when I was at a company called Financial Direction, so I was in private banking at the time, we had a wholesale division that was looking at business lending and all that sort of stuff. Channel conflict really didn't exist because there was a recognition that the broker was adding value to the system. Now, when you think about the system and the flow of mortgages, the reality is what one bank loses from here, another bank generally gains from, because around 80% of all loans are going to the banks anyhow. And what that bank loses go to there and there to there, and it just flows around the same pond. So they kind of need to get over themselves, right? Because they're going to lose some, but they're going to win some, right? Because that's just the way it works. They shouldn't be engaging their branches to proactively give deals that are not readily available through the broker network to offer it to a consumer that walks in the door. That should not be allowed, because that is, in my mind, anti-competitive practices. If
you look at Macquarie as an example, right? And this is and let me go full circle on this before I get shot by the state manager of Macquarie. Their policies are not unbelievable. Right. The interest rates are not unbelievable, but they consistently deliver an exceptional experience to broker. It's fast turnaround, and that's pretty much all they've done for 10 years. And year on year, it is outrageous how aggressive their book is growing. And I saw an article the other day that they think that they might be in the top 4 within the next 24 months. That alone says to me that the collaboration of a competition mindset of bank versus broker, like surely that's a use case that the big 4 could look at and say, rather than trying to, compete when we're clearly not winning, why would we not work with them instead?
I agree. And, you've probably got a whole lot of legal buffoons sitting in the banking system saying, oh, no, you shouldn't do that, or marketing teams that are all getting upset and twisted. But you touched on it before. It's all about shareholders, profit on return on investment. There's those sort of things that sort of tend to play out louder. And a lot of the posturing we see in media, in my mind, is more around the capital markets as much as anything else. And they're just trying to make sure there is confidence across everything rather than people getting a bit nervous and jittery on market share. And I feel that, Macquarie, in my mind, has the right recipe for success, and that's obviously proving out in what they're doing. The major banks need to balance their thoughts and understand that way back in the early 90s and even potentially into the late 80s when brokering first started, it was there to deliver cost-effective and efficient volumes into the banking system. Right? That's how aggregation started. It was all about you train them, you look after their commission, you control them, you take responsibility for them, because we don't want, back in the day, 5,000 brokers banging on our door with 5,000 different questions. You handle it, and then I've only got 10 questions sort of thing, right? So everything was put in place for the right reason. The thing that irks me, and I said in the 70s, I cut my teeth with a major bank, right? The major bank. Not community, right? I look at it today and go, I'm really disappointed with the attitude today. Here is an industry that helped build you to what you are today. Same with all the banks. And yet you want to go down this path of channel conflict to, offering deals that are just not acceptable elsewhere. And I've had this conversation with government and regulators. How can a bank justify saying to a consumer, well, you're currently on, and I'm just making numbers up, you're currently on 6%, but I know you've been speaking to your broker, I'll do you 5.5%. And I'll give you some money in your bank account too. But they wouldn't offer that through the broker channel. That's just wrong, right? And creates a false economy that's a race to the bottom. It achieves nothing of value. So therefore, that sort of behaviour to me is completely unacceptable. And they're the things in channel conflict that irk me, and it still happens across the industry. I mean, we're now over 22,000 brokers in this country. Doesn't take a small percentage to create a lot of numbers that are having the problem. So, we can spend a few days on this, but that's okay.
You mentioned recently that you think the industry is in fairly good shape. What keeps you up at night still?
There's not a lot that keeps me up at night, to be honest with you. The big challenge in my mind is hopefully ensuring that brokers aren't taking shortcuts. In an industry where it's full of paper warfare, back in the day, you mentioned fax machines before. Many people may not remember what they are. There were telex machines before that too, and there you are. But the paper warfare as such, whether it's physical or digital, is still a lot. And the compliance obligations through lenders' checklists, which is their actions to be responsible to RG 209, responsible lending obligations, they become quite onerous. And you think you've done everything and you miss something. You say, oh, wait on, I thought I got that, but I missed it. But people who deliberately take shortcuts, and there's very few in the industry, but they're the things that concern me the most, because the one bad apple ruins the whole barrel, if you like.
Definitely.
Now, we don't see a lot of that, but every now and then it crops up and it becomes really problematic. So it's always something when I'm talking to people who say, don't take shortcuts. That's the thing that probably concerns me the most. In addition to making sure they meet their compliance and governance obligations by law, they are very, very important, but that's generally well covered by aggregators and lead brokers, groups such as Flint and so on. You guys all do a wonderful job with that sort of stuff.
We try. I'll tell you what, there's 3 times the amount of paperwork though when I started.
That's why I talk about the paper warfare.
Jeez, it's a lot, especially if you're starting out as a new broker, trying to navigate what is a very complex ecosystem is a lot difficult.
And this is why training and mentoring is so important. To make sure the right habits are formed up front. In this industry, it sucks.
I think it's completely broken.
So we're actually looking at that as we go into 2026. We're looking at the whole mentoring ecosystem. Back in 2010 when the NCCP began, there was some framing by ASIC around that. They then removed it. So it's the ACL's responsibility. See you later. Enjoy. And it's sort of all fallen apart from there. I've seen price rip-offs where people are being charged phenomenal amounts of money every year, never written a loan. The mentor is just ripping them 15 grand or something like that, and they're getting loans from their parents to pay for it, and all these sort of horrible things that come up. And it's not just one. There's quite a few stories, quite many stories on that. But then there's also the understanding of what is the mentor actually meant to be doing, and what is that part?
There's no framework for
Correct.
that.
So we intend to build it.
Yeah.
But that is the thing that becomes the challenge in the marketplace, because there's a whole lot of variations on theme and a whole lot of different opinions to what it should be or shouldn't be. So it's not an easy answer, but it's certainly one that needs to be had, and that sector needs to be fixed for the benefit of everyone.
And I think if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers on what they think as well. Like what Reem and I think a modern broker needs from a skill set perspective is very different to what I needed when I started, I think. Yeah, it's interesting just to see, because like I had a broker the other day do the like the cert and some of the questions. I was like, who wrote this? It hasn't been updated in 30 years. But it's just interesting how disjointed some of the education is for new to industry, given that the average broker is average.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, though, there are some very good people in the mentoring sector. But your point that you made before, and which is what our concern is, the framework's broken. It needs to be pulled apart, looked at, and re-put back together again to create something that's of value and what was the intent of mentoring and what it was all about, but needs to be all about in today's marketplace, which has changed from 10 years ago, certainly changed from 20, 30 years ago.
Let's quickly talk about your Order of Australia, if we can, because I think that's firstly a pretty incredible recognition, right? And I know you're a humble person and you probably, wouldn't talk about this unless I brought it up, but can you talk me through, I guess, how that happened? Because I know you were heavily involved with the advocacy for us, and most people probably don't understand the levels that you went to fight for our industry, but it is something that I admire and have a lot of respect for. But I'd love you to maybe just give me a quick little rundown of how that happened.
Thanks, and I appreciate your words on that. So in 2019, I was awarded an AM, a member of the Order of Australia, in the Queen's Birthdays Honours List of the day. And an AM is for significant service. So you see a lot of OAMs. People think that's that's higher up. It's not. It's the first run on the ladder. So it's not putting it down, but it's for service. It's not for significant. AM's the next one up, and there's two more above that. And so it was awarded to me at the time through, it's a closed process, so I didn't know it was going on. Various people have to support whatever is put forward as an application and recommendation for. And you don't, my understanding is you don't sort of go into that process thinking, I'm going to achieve this category. You just go in, and then those that review are the ones to decide where you fall, right? Or you land, I should say. Fall's probably a bad word. At the time, so that would have had to have been in 2018 that was put together. So we had the Haynes Royal Commission happening at all the time. There were a whole range of papers before that through ASIC, ACCC, Senate inquiries, and so on, that were all happening in the background before that, together with my work that I started in 2016 on mental health advocacy, how I approached that, where that journey led to for the industry. So in 2016, no one had talked about mental health. I put myself out and said, well, I suffer from it. This is what it looks like. I've got family members, corporate members. We need to shine a light on this. Today, it's a commonplace conversation. It's no longer a mystique or a taboo. Conversations for us progressed into our Wellness Hub, which is all about providing actual solutions to help people. But that conversation I started back then was a part of, the framework of the AM that I was awarded, plus what I was doing here and overseas, both industry-wise and mental health-wise. So those conversations I was having at the time, together with my own personal charity that I was running for parents and carers of special needs children and their mental health, and the conversations they need to have without being put in judgment of. Because quite often parents with special needs kids get in a very stressful environment and just need to say things that most people would say, oh, you can't say that. But they're getting it off. It's a pressure valve it's releasing. So anyhow, those were the combination of things that led up to that, and why that was put in place at that point in time. When the governor awarded me the medal, which is an interesting ceremony, very typical government style of process. The comment was made to me on the quiet was, this is why you're being given it. right? It was all about the mental health.
Great.
I was doing in the foundation, the charity, together with what happened in the industry. But if it was only about the industry, it would probably be conceived, well, it's an OAM because you're doing your job and you're doing it well. That's good. But these things are all about what you do above and beyond what people see, above and beyond the line of above and beyond what people expect you should be doing. Yep. It's all about the extra. And there you go. There's a snapshot of the order.
Mental health.
Yep.
It's something that's very close to my heart and yours obviously too. What do you think we can do better as an industry? I know you said it's a regular conversation, but I do still feel like it's not as regular as it could be outside of, are you okay day and whatnot. I think on a more consistent basis, okay, what can brokerages do and brokers do to kind of
so we
level that out?
We talk about it all the time. So it's not just the International Men's Day, Women's Day, Are you okay? It's far, far more than that.
Yep.
It's in every conversation that I have. But from a business point of view, I think you need to embed mental health awareness and support into your everyday business culture and into your policies and procedures, so it's cemented as something as a must-do, not just when you think about it. And you need to support and engage with your staff regularly around that subject. So the FBAA, we have somebody come in once a month who's there, if you like, as a counsellor for people to, if they want to go have a chat, can go have a chat. There's no pre-bookings, or there probably is these days, but it was just an open door policy in strict confidence. But that just meant people, our staff could just talk to somebody who's not an employee and not your boss and have a very open conversation. No, it's been dealt with privately and confidentially. And those are the sort of things I think work well for staff, knowing that your employer actually does give a shit about you. They're doing the extra things they don't have to, but also have framed it so there are definite processes that you can go through to talk about any issues or hassles you're having. Because right now, I mean, mental health is all about what's largely what's impacting you in your life, and a lot of it we think is personal things. It's not. It could be bullying and harassment within the business place. You've got psychosocial hazards now starting to be introduced, and laws that frame around that create greater problems. So it's not just a personal thing, it's a business environment. That's why culture is so important. If you get that culture right, then that will help to support people in what they're doing. And you'll just wanna because you wanna, right? It's not something you think, I got to do it. I want to do it because I want to.
When you think of culture, right, I always thought it had to be these big, grand, off-sites or something that was, pretty big. But one of the things that's had the biggest impact on our business is Toasty Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I'll normally go out to Five Dock or Lane Cove Deli and get all the different cuts of meats and cheeses and everything else, and we do and fresh focaccias and whatnot, and then do the Toasty Tuesday. It's just been a time where people can kind of come together, chat, not talk about work, and it's funny because watching that each week, and it's been getting bigger and bigger. Something so simple has some of the biggest impact on our culture and our business. I think a lot of people think when they think about culture or mental health that you got to, it's going to cost a lot of money, or you got to implement big, huge change. But sometimes the simple things have the biggest impact.
You hit it right on the head. It's the little things that count, right? And culture is all about family, right? And how you deal with people in your family and the environment that is. Now, some people say, they're at war with their brother or whatever. But look, it doesn't mean you always get on. But it's the underlying ethos and philosophy that you have as to how you treat people. So what you're doing with Toasty Tuesday is exactly what culture's about. You don't do it for any other reason because you want to. Right? You want to treat people, like a part of your family. They are part of your family. You probably spend more time with them than you do with others in your family.
So the other day,
so it's important that you balance that out and have that part of that balance as a part of not having to talk about business, is sharing a meal, is having a drink, and that doesn't have to be alcoholic drink, but having that time where you step away from the norm and treat yourselves like people rather than a process. And again, we do a whole host of things with our staff on team building days, and we do a few things that are offsite as well, but it's all about getting together. And I think every Friday they sit down and have a meal together, or at least have a an afternoon tea. And those are the sort of things that do make
Biggest
a fundamental
impacts.
difference in a business over and above the process-driven things that you need to do. This is what gets culture right. And a lot of people try and build a process around culture. It doesn't exist. It's being human. It's being a person. It's actually caring and giving a shit. That's what counts. That's what builds culture.
Work-life balance,
Yep.
I think, is an interesting lead into this next question. Broking's hard. Like when you start out as well, you're doing everything. I know brokers are working 14, 15, 16, 17 hours a day. They've also got families. They're not present as a partner or a parent often. There's a sacrifice there. I'll come back to that question in a second, but what do you do outside of work that's not work-related that you enjoy? Because you obviously, I see you as head of FBAA and a senior figure in the industry, but what do you do with your spare time? Sure. Is there anything you enjoy?
A bit like everybody else. There's not a lot of spare time, but the thing is, and I actually spoke about this last Friday night at an event I was at, but also something I talk about regularly, is that it envelops a part of the mental health conversation. And quite often when you're feeling high anxieties, which is my greatest challenge, as well as depression, and I've been there as well, that you need to find that release. Like, so find your peace. So my peace is riding big motorbikes, right? So I have an Indian Springfield. It's 368 kilos of 1900 cc's raw, awesome.
Since the photos of it's a big bike.
It's a big bike, and I love big, heavy bikes. The bike I had before that tried to kill me twice when I was going through a depression, so it had to go. It was a little bit lighter, a little bit lower on power, but was built to race. So that was its heart of why it was built. So that thing tried to kill me twice.
You do road trips?
Day road trips, I don't like doing overnight ones so far. Getting a little bit older, got hip and knee issues at times.
Oh, we are.
But look, the thing I say to everybody is find your peace. It doesn't matter what it is. Mine is riding my bike. Whether it's surfing, skiing, gardening, bushwalking, it makes no difference what it is. But whatever you find is where your peace is, you need to do it and do it regularly. Especially when things start to get a bit dark. And the sooner you jump into that, the better, because if it gets too dark, too far, it's really hard to get out of that nosedive. Winston Churchill termed depression as the black dog, and it really is. It'll bite you on the ass and it will hurt. And it's hard to get rid of that lockjaw.
Do you still have rough days?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. And it's always sparked. There's something that's causing it. There's always a cause to what it is. So whether it's stress at work or whether it's disappointment in people, I find at times it can lead into it, or whether I'm overthinking something and all of a sudden I get a severe anxiety attack and I just can't move out of a chair. So this is why I talk about find your peace. The thing that breaks the cycle for me with the anxiety is to get off my ass and do something different. So whatever I'm doing at that time, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing, but whatever I'm doing at the time, I need to get up and do something different. And all what does, it helps your mind to break the cycle of whatever was going through your head. And all of a sudden you'll reset fairly quickly. There's rough days, and be king to say there's not. I went through a period about 1.5 years ago for almost 8 months where it was one long rough day. And there is stuff going on at the moment where it's tough at times. But the old saying, life wasn't meant to be easy, but it's worthwhile. And it's
got any advice for anyone who's got some bad anxiety or depression or just not feeling their best?
Find your peace and go do it. It's a very simple thing. It's not hard. It's not complicated. But again, people tend to not put the right level of energy into that thought process. So some people might love playing golf. Great. If you can't get out and go on the course, go to the driving range and smack a few balls. Whatever it may be, but do it and enjoy it and let your mind be absorbed by it. I mean, the one thing with motorbike riding is trying to hold upright a big, heavy, powerful motorcycle takes a fair bit of concentration and effort and a lot of core engagement. People would be surprised the amount of exercise you actually get out of riding a motorbike because of that, especially when you're hitting the twisties. But it takes so much of your sensory capabilities to actually do what you're doing. You forget about everything else. And that's a part of it. Do something you enjoy and forget about everything else. Because tomorrow will come, the sun will shine. You need to keep going.
True.
So you need to break that cycle and keep doing it. And of course, if things get really bad, don't be afraid or ashamed to go and get professional help. When I went into depression a couple of years ago, I went and got professional help from a counsellor, a psychotherapist, which I had no idea what one was. Psychologists use hypnosis as a part of their therapy. I've got a few jokes around that. I won't do them today. But it was the best thing I ever did.
Yep.
I came out of that screaming on top, right? And never looked back since. We have top-up sessions and so on. It is a very, very good thing to do.
Yep.
And if you're in Sydney, Bronwyn Penhaligon, go see her if you need the help. But don't be afraid or ashamed to reach out to someone, a professional, to get that help. You'll probably find it's the best thing you'll ever do.
Yep. I had a falling out with my original business partner about 12 months ago, and I remember at the time, I was pretty hard on myself about the situation because I'd put so much energy into it and it hadn't worked out.
Yeah.
And then I just started doing the 10,000 steps each morning.
Yeah.
Lost 10 kilos. But what was the biggest thing about that was being a better partner to my wife. Like we go together, and then I was more present in the rest of the time that we were together.
Yeah.
Also just getting outside, getting a bit of fresh air, clearing my head. I noticed, in a matter of weeks, how much impact that movement had. Just getting out of the house or getting off the couch or getting away and finding something that you enjoy doing. And I still do it religiously now, but I also do the 100 Days Off Drinking for New Year's Eve. I've done that for 7 years now. And again, another huge change in my mental capacity and motivation. But do you do like exercising at all? Are you moving or?
Well, the bike is significant exercising. Let me give you a tip. Make sure movement's regular. I wear an Oura ring that monitors my movements and also, more importantly, my sleep.
I was about to
say, ensure that I get good sleep and what are the things that I do that impact and create bad sleep. Right. So
how do you sleep better?
Huh?
How do you sleep better?
I don't eat late at night. I prefer not to have meals after 6 p.m. at night. Can't always control that. I don't drink at night if I can avoid it. Yep. So I don't drink a lot anyhow. Yep. I used to drink bourbon till the cows came home. I drink very little these days. So I try and measure those things that, no meals after 6 p.m. or it's at 6 p.m. but finished by 7 sort of thing. Yep. Don't drink at night. Make sure I down tools like computers and phones.
Yep.
They say 3 hours. I generally wait about an hour before I go to bed and go through those routines and make sure that I'm comfortable. I like to be cool in my bedroom. I don't like to be hot, so I make sure the temperature's right.
Yep.
So those things all measure to give great night's sleeps or much better night's sleeps, whether it's deep sleep or REM or whatever it may be, to get those better outcomes. One of the things I wanted to say, though, that you touched on being present, right? For people, and especially for brokers, given how busy life is, being present in the moment is fundamentally important.
Yep.
Now, that could be like this with a business. We're doing a podcast. Don't be distracted by other things. It could be in a business meeting. Don't be distracted by laptops or your phone, or whether you're just with your partner, making sure that you're not distracted by anything whilst you're with them, that you are focused on them. And I found being present in the moment was very, very calming for me, because I always seem to be distracted by things at times. Too much technology, watches, phones, tablets, laptops, you name it, it would always be going. So being present at the moment, I think, is fundamentally very, very important, both within business when you're having conversations, but also with your partner personally. It's an interesting piece that we need to focus on. We talk about work-life balance. That being present to me is great. And also, going through moments of gratitude.
Do you believe in work-life balance, or is this what you prioritise?
Well, it's both. I believe in work-life balance. Right, all work and no play makes Billy a dull and boring prick. No, you've got to find it. Otherwise, where do you find your peace? Where do you find the time to do the things that you do? Where do you find the time to spend time with that person that you have given your life to? Right? I said, I want to be with you for life. I'm not doing this just for the moment. This is long-term stuff, right? You've got to prioritise time for that. But you should just naturally want to have that time for that. So work-life balance is great. I think it's very, very important. And it also reinforces in your relationship how much that person is important to you.
Let's talk about the big buzzword for the moment, AI.
AI.
We were at the AI native Lendy event the other week. I saw you there. I think they're probably market leading in terms of where they're at as a business, and what Bass and Dave are doing is pretty exciting.
Yep.
But I also think there's a long way to go. Yeah. So it's an interesting one where a lot of people think of AI of replacing them rather than elevating them, and there's that human-centric versus man versus robot mentality. It's an interesting
Terminator
one.
is coming.
Yeah. What's your thought on AI and I guess the good parts of it and the stuff that we need to think about that could cause some issues as well?
Yeah. So I think just reflecting on that event we were both at with Lendy that they put on, I found it quite interesting, if not fascinating, that the 4 or 5 panelists they had that were talking about what they had built for Lendy to drive their process and their interactions with customers to get that application process flowing. All of them said the same thing. They were learning. So no one's got the answer today. They're learning as they go. Which is great, but it also says it's what you said. We're early days.
Yep.
So we're all learning as to where this thing is going. But in my mind, it's like the sun rising and the tide coming in. You ain't going to stop it. So you need to be on board with it, and you need to put time and energy to understand it and how that may or may not apply to your business. Now, as we look at an industry as a whole, a lot of people are very concerned that AI is going to take their jobs away. I don't believe that at all.
Me neither.
So especially at the front line, from a broker point of view, I think there are probably future considerations where we have for a while outsourced processes to companies here and overseas. They are potentially probably at risk because it's a process versus then a human interaction, even though there are interactions that could be driven by technology. But then again, at the next step beyond that, there is still human interaction anyhow to get settlement to happen and conversations within the relationship that was started up front that need to be there to help finalise matters, especially if there are any challenges.
Yep.
So there's that piece in the middle, so I go, that at some stage to me is a piece that'll be replaced. We're seeing with what was presented at the Lenny event that they're using that as a part of the conversation after the contact with the broker to help drive in that pay slip or that piece of information. And the dialogue I thought was brilliant, and how quickly they could change the tone of that dialogue was quite funny. But that's that piece of trying to get it to application stage to be lodged. Yeah. But then after that, you still got human interface, especially in times that we are still in whereby you can't, or with many lenders, you can't do digital settlements. I think you should be able to. I mean, we need to bring in digital discharge forms that are common across all lenders. We need the digital signatures. We need digital settlement. We're talking to government regulators about this because a part of it evolved during COVID through the pandemic, and then it was an interim measure and then pulled. But these are things that should just happen. Together with application forms that are the same across the industry. They've been trying to get that for about 30 years. The bastard's still not done.
I said to us the other day, COVID was the best thing that happened to our industry in terms of work. Forced all the lenders to do digital VOI, DigiDocs, coming to the 21st century. But it's still a long way to go in terms of that uniformative approach. Document. And even discharges are crazy sometimes. To even get a form, and it's unnecessarily difficult.
Yeah, and they're all basically the same, except this one's got that name on it, this one's got that name on it. Well, you could make that more generic and still meet the needs of each. This is my head, this is my cynicism coming out. These are legal divisions within banks trying to self-justify their existence, right? Because it's really not necessary. And it would make everything so much more fluid and less painful. And that's why you've got the existence like I still call them American Title. Title First, I think they're called, where it's almost like an insurance product. You pay a fee. They just settle the loan and they sort out the paperwork afterwards to try and take some of that pain away. Great idea. And been around for quite a while. But, it's because there is a need there to get these things right. At the moment, there's just so many barriers caused by different parties and stakeholders to that conversation that prohibits it from happening. But it should happen.
I think that's pretty much it from my end. Have you got anything else you want to talk about before we finish up?
Oh, mate, I guess the only thing is, and I touched a bit on it before, is if I was to reflect back on the past and sort of say, hey, this is something that everybody needs to take note of. Don't take shortcuts. It's a quick way out. It's a quick way to put a bullet in your head. And if you're here for a business that you want to run as a professional, just don't do it.
Yep.
It becomes a really big mistake. And make sure you look after your mental health. I know we've spoken a fair bit on it, but it's so important because if your mind's not clear, you can't focus on the things that should be in front of mind for the best interest of your client, the things that should be front of mind that you shouldn't take shortcuts on because, as I said, there's so much paperwork and so much compliance obligations and checklists that seem to never end that you need to be really on your game.
Yep.
That's why work-life balance is so important. You need that time to relax to make sure that when you need to be on your best and on your game, you are the sharpest you can be.
Yep.
And I think these things are really important, fundamental to success in this industry, outside of finding unique value propositions as to why people should deal with you and all that sort of stuff. I mean, they're fairly normal things. But to me, these things are what sits underneath to make somebody successful because they are mentally and physically healthy and up for the task in front of them. Otherwise, it gets damn hard.
Couldn't agree more. Peter White, thank you for your time. It's been great talking to you, and I know we've had lots of chats over the last decade together, and I'm sure the listeners will appreciate the conversation as well.
Thanks, Christian. It's been my absolute pleasure to join you on this podcast. Thanks, mate.
Thanks.